Hello and welcome to the session on developing an exceptional student education parent advisory group. My name's Amy Kowalski. I'm the Parent Service Program Specialist at the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services here in Tallahassee at the Department of Education. You'll see my picture on the left. Jessica Bertain is the Educational Director, also at the Bureau. You'll see her picture on the right. Jessica is over the Bureau Resource and Information Center as well as Parent Services. Let's start with Florida law and how it defines the roles and responsibilities of the state and district as it pertains to education. Florida is a local control state, meaning that the superintendent of schools and the school board are tasked with making policies and procedures and decisions for that local school district. Which it makes sense if you really think about it that a school district is going to know more about their community than the state office here in Tallahassee. Brandon, Florida, their school district in Hillsborough is going to know more about their area than what we would in Tallahassee. The role of the department, as defined by statute, is to provide guidance, technical assistance, support, and resources across the state. So this kind of gives you, this really gives you a framework of what we're building on education-wise and how we move forward. Now it's time to look at numbers. So in Florida, there are over 2.8 million students that are enrolled in our public schools. 14% of those students are students with disabilities, which would mean students with IEPs. So we're looking at over 400,000 kiddos that are receiving services in the state of Florida. We've talked a little bit about Florida law and how it pertains to education. We've also looked at the numbers of students with disabilities that are served. So let's talk a little bit about parental input. So what are parents in Florida telling us? Each year we have a survey that runs from February 1st through the end of May. This survey is specific to parents of ESE students, and it's available in paper and also online. Hopefully you've seen this survey. Once the survey ends, we collect the data and we look at those 4 lowest scoring items. So it would be those 4 questions that parents are the least happiest with. So we're looking at connect parents with one another. We know how hard and challenging it is to navigate this system. So parents are really asking for the support of each other, connecting, support groups, helping each other. Parents are also asking for training, just some extra tools to put in their toolkit, which really makes sense because I always say, as a parent, you don't know what you don't know. And unless you're offered these trainings and this information, it's almost impossible to be aware of specific things. You know, it's not uncommon at the Bureau when a parent calls us that has a specific question for us to say, let me talk to the person over that content area so that I can give you accurate, up-to-date information and call you back. Because ESE is so broad, there is no way that one person can know everything. So it's important to have that training and up-to-date information offered to parents. Next, it's connect parents with available services outside of the school. Vocational rehab for those kiddos who are in secondary transition. You know, getting them ready to work. SSI office if your child might qualify for Social Security. Community programs. Your kiddo may be looking for a community program, so you may need information to your local ARC program, for instance. So just ensuring, the school ensuring that you're plugged into that community and that you know what's available. Also discussing available options when you disagree with the school. We're hoping that you work closely with the district, and I'm sure most of you do, but there's going to be times when there's an impasse when you just cannot agree, and that happens. So you should be made aware of what your options are. At the Bureau, we call them dispute resolution options. There's going to be district level options, and state level options. So it's important for parents to know what they are, and the feedback is that parents would like to have more of that information. So how are these lowest scoring items being addressed? As I mentioned before, these items drive our work in parent services, our strategic plan. Everything that we do relates back to these items. As I mentioned before, we serve 400,000 kiddos with disabilities in the state of Florida. Our staff at the Tallahassee office is about 50. So we do not have the capacity, to be in every district. So we have what we call discretionary projects and partners. So you may recognize some of these names. Fiddlers, which is Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resource Center, has 5 components, and one of those is parent services. Each Fiddler Center has a parent liaison that works within a district. Some of them may cover more than one district. It just depends on the size of the district. These are the contacts that I work with. We have quarterly calls. We have face-to-face trainings. This is the contact you would have to get trainings, information, to find out if there's an active parent advisory committee or group. So these are my contacts on the front line. There's also some other projects listed here that do work directly with parents that you may or may not be familiar with. That's FIN, SEDNet, Project 10, CARD, and the Family Cafe, Arts for All Florida. So those are just a few, but we have over 100 projects, but the ones listed on this slide work directly with families. Our other projects are more behind the scenes, training school districts directly. So I did mention that we have partners that we collaborate closely with. One of our biggest partners are Family Network on Disabilities, or F&D as we call them. They are critical to the work we do with parents. F&D does all of our social media campaigns. They do our Facebook Lives. They do one on the parent survey each year. Most recently, they've done one on COVID-19 resources. They host a web page for us with over 1,000 resources, educational resources for parents to use since schools went virtual this year. It's just unbelievable the amazing amount of work that they collaborate with us on. So we're always thankful for F&D. They also assist parents. They have tip sheets. Just a fantastic partner that we're very fortunate to have. Now, they are separate from the department. They are federally funded but have nothing to do with the department. So parents, you can call them. They are a neutral entity, and they will provide us information. They do not share any information with us as far as your contact info. And we do often refer parents to F&D if they need a little more assistance than what we can offer. We're happy to connect you with them. Parent to Parent of Miami is also a federally funded parent center that is specific to the Miami-Dade area for parents of students with disabilities. Then Disability Rights is also a federally funded entity, and this provides legal services to persons with disabilities and their families. And also the Office of Early Learning is something, some of our partners that we work with closely for our pre-K kiddos. Okay, so when looking at that backdrop, everything we just provided, our parent survey that we're looking at. So currently, 39 school districts have an active advisory group or committee. Okay, so now we're going to get down into the information on creating an advisory group. So what is an ESE parent advisory group? There are lots of interesting definitions floating around there, so in my opinion, simplicity is best. So the general definition is a group that provides input on special education issues to its local school district. Its purpose is to advise and advocate, but not to decide policy. So it's important to know the role of an advisory group. It is to look at things and provide advice from a parent's perspective, because your voice is important, but an advisory group is not a governing body. So it's very important to know what the parameter is and the role of the group. Because you're not a governing body does not mean that you do not have validity. It does mean that you have value, but understanding your role is key to moving forward with the group. So why should parents get involved? It's very important that a parent's perspective be shared. The view from a parent is very different than what view an administrator may have, a superintendent may have, a caseworker may have, an ESE teacher may have. And it's also to raise questions. You know, a teacher may do something for a specific reason, but to a parent it may look like something else. To also voice your concerns, and to always remember to provide solutions. You're looking at it from a different angle, so you may have a different solution. You may have a kiddo in elementary and a kiddo in middle school, so you've looked at it from a different process. And providing input to leadership as well. So it's very important to have that parent's voice, that parent's perspective. You've been through the process, or you're going through the process, and you have, like I've said, that different angle, and it's important to bring that to the awareness of the district, of the school, of the ESE advisor. So you want your advisory group to be effective, so we don't want to just meet to meet. And so many times groups and committees and councils end up meeting just to meet, and it's great to be social and it's great to have that contact, but you want to make sure that you're moving forward and in a direction to influence outcomes and to impact the success of students. So you want to look at that data to address needs. You want to help shape development of services, policies, and programs. You want to improve that culture and that climate. There's so many moving pieces within these programs. You want to keep things fresh. You want to look at book studies. You want to have that annual strategic planning. You want to be ensured that you're not just spinning your wheels. You want to use that time in those meetings effectively. Finding out if your district does have an ESE parent advisory group or representation of an ESE parent on one of the school advisory committees or the district advisory committees. So reach out to your Fiddler Centers, as I've said before. You also have the option, of course, to call your school or your ESE department. If there's already a group established, the chairperson is probably going to be your point person that can give you information. If there is not an advisory group, again, work with your Fiddler's ESE parent liaison and the ESE department. Some districts do have other groups, as I mentioned, the school advisory committee or council, the also known as SAC, or the district advisory council known as DAC. They should represent the demographics of the school or the district, which would include a parent or parents representing the ESE population of that district. So just reaching out and inquiring, seeing where the district is as far as representation, that's an important first step for you to take. So you found out that your district does not have any type of ESE parent advisory in existence. Gosh, so where do we start? Again, let's contact that Fiddler's parent liaison. Contact me if necessary. And then you need to really start to look at the data. And what is the data? The data are the numbers that tell us something. The demographics, how many kiddos are in your district, with disabilities? What type of disabilities? What is the graduation rate? What has it been over the last 5 years? What is this data telling us for the area of needs? Are there parent involvement? Look at the survey. What is the survey telling us by the district, by the schools, the discipline rate? So there's so many different areas, and the department does have a lot of data for you to choose from and to look at what your platforms are. Now, having said that, there's certain framework that has to be put in that we'll be reviewing, as far as bylaws, which include everything from membership to amendments. So this is just giving you system level challenges, broad thinking. As I just mentioned, an ESE parent advisory group is going to have members, a purpose, a mission statement, goals. All of these things are going to be in a bylaws or a handbook that will include bylaws, which is going to be very detailed. But you have to start with an outline, which is kind of, a framework, and then build the details within. So things that you're going to have to consider, like I just mentioned, are members, purpose, mission, and your goals, which some of this can change annually. It's just going to depend on what direction you choose your group, or your group chooses to move in. So membership, what does this look like? Well, it should be diverse. It should include at least 50% of parents of students with disabilities. You want to look at the age range from pre-K all the way through high school, because services go through age 21. You're also going to want to have some ESE staff. You may want to have some teachers or even someone from the ESE department at the district level. So you want to have a well-rounded group. You may even want to have some community members, someone from Voc Rehab or the faith-based community. So this is all something that you should think about, and at your initial meeting, all of this will be discussed. Okay, so these are the members we want. Who is missing? What do we need? So definitely some rich conversation should happen around what this membership should look like. So after you get with your fiddler's person or your district contact and all the permissions necessary to begin to plan for an advisory group, you're going to have a meeting date chosen in time, and it's going to be advertised. Now what that looks like, that's going to be a decision between you and the district. Your fiddler's person may advertise it. You may distribute flyers at schools. Again, that's going to be a local level decision. But you're going to want to get the word out somewhere. And at these meetings, you may have, quite a few, because, parents have jobs. They have the kiddos at home that they need to assist with homework, food, laundry, all those exciting things that we do from day to day. So time will be limited at these meetings, so you're certainly not going to be able to cover everything, and it's going to be a work in progress. But some of the things that you want to address at your first meeting, I suggest there be an agenda and time allocated for each subject so you can keep the meeting moving, is the purpose. What do you want this meeting to accomplish? And your mission, your goals, your bylaws. And again, your bylaws are where you're going to have specific information, like on membership election, how that's going to look. Subsequent meetings will provide more details with creation of law. So, as I previously mentioned, you're not going to be able to accomplish all of this in one meeting. You may not be able to accomplish it all in 6 meetings. Just ensure that you are moving forward and you are accomplishing something. Remember, slow and steady wins the race. Inch by inch is a cinch. Yard by yard is too hard. So, not that you're racing to create this, but that you are at least moving forward. And even creating a timeline. You can create a timeline with your group, which can be updated. If it's taking more sessions than what you thought it would to create this purpose, then that's fine. Also, technology is your friend. Email is your friend. I know we do so much work with our collaborative partners through emails. SurveyMonkey is your friend. If you're not familiar with it, Google it. We use it all the time. Zoom has become our best friend since we have gone virtual during this pandemic. So that there's lots of creative ways to get things done in between face-to-face meetings. And actually, depending on the CDC recommendations at this point, these meetings may be done through virtual platforms. It's just getting creative and thinking outside of the box. So when looking at a purpose, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to meet just to meet. It's great to visit, but we want to have this purpose and make sure that we're all on the same page and moving towards something. We want to look at shared goals. What is the outcome we're looking at? Give examples how your input can make a difference. What is really within our circle of influence or our cone of influence? What can we really do? As far as an advisory group, what can we advise on? Share your struggles and your frustrations, and how can we ensure that a parent doesn't have to go through this same process? Can we develop flyers? Can we work with fiddlers on a resource guide for parents or a flow chart? Or, what would have really helped me? A toolkit. So looking at things like that, recognize and communicate that agreement is not always necessary. So, Jane may have this great idea and Tom may have this great idea, but looking at them, and the group may decide which is priority and which is to be put on the back burner. We're not saying that it's something that can't be done, but at this moment in time, it is not a priority. So understanding that not now does not mean no, and respecting each other and putting in that way of work and those understandings within that purpose. So the purpose of the committee is to provide info to parents and input to district staff regarding our ongoing effort to continuously improve services for students with disability. So this is an actual purpose of an advisory group. So it was put together. It tells what the advisory group is going to do, provide info and input to the district regarding efforts. And it's a continuing effort to improve services. Now, this is a very broad purpose. So I think it's important to have that. Some people call it the helicopter view, that what is the big think that we're going to do? And then you would narrow that purpose down later into your plan. So when you're creating this purpose, think big. What is the ultimate end result you want to have with this group? There's nothing wrong with thinking big. So once you've decided on that mission, and also always remember, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So Google that mission. What are other states doing? What are other districts doing? Get ideas. Why recreate the wheel? And I also say that with a mission statement, look and see what other districts have done, what other states have done. You don't have to start with a blank slate and have to, rack your brain. So a mission statement, you want to look at a summary, you want to create a summary describing the aims, values, and overall plan of your advisory group, your committee. But again, look and see what other states have done. There's guides out there, there's brochures, there's all type of stuff. So I think researching, not only the purpose, but also, the mission. I think that's wise to do some research, because we can sit here for hours racking our brains when you just want to work smarter and not harder. So here's an example of a mission statement. They want to cultivate the partnership between the school district and families of students with special needs through communication, advocacy, education, and collaboration to maximize individual student potential. I like this mission statement. It's Indian River School District's Parent Advisory Council. I think it's a very positive statement. It's very broad. I like that they use communication because that's key in advocating. They use education, collaborating, that means to work together, and to maximize. These are all positive action words, and I think it communicates effectively that we are a doing advisory group. Our mission is to do. We know we're advising, but we're going to create this wonderful way and partnerships to advise. So I really like this a lot. So this is a great example of a positive mission statement that uses these great action words that are doable. We have another example here. To serve as an advisory group to increase the involvement of parents of children with disabilities in making recommendations regarding special ed policy issues. So this group's mission is a little more specific. They want to address the special education policies or the issues with them within that school district. So this one is very narrow and specific. So if that's what you're going for, a specific issue, then you do want to make it specific and hone in on that particular subject. The broader the mission, like the previous slide, the more options you have as far as your work. So it's important to think about that when creating the mission, that you take into consideration the work that's to be done, because new issues will arise each year and you will want to be able to address those as they come. So just consider that when looking at that mission statement, reviewing other ones and researching, and when you're creating your own. So creating goals. Goals should be attainable. You can work toward them, but you really should be able to measure them and be attainable. A goal, let's look for 100%, work toward 100% graduation rate for students with disabilities. Yeah, it's a great goal, but if our district had 68% graduation rate of students with disabilities, is it really attainable to have 100% within that 1 year? So it's just looking at those to make sure that those goals are measurable, number one, but they're realistic too. So you want to have member and community input. You want specific annual goals, and consider the theory of action. If I do this, then this will happen. And that's very important. It's a cause and effect. So other things to consider. You want to identify shared goals between parents and the school. You want to give examples of how parent input can make a difference. You want to allow parents to share the struggles they've had with agencies and schools. This can lead to improved methods of delivering services. You want to recognize and communicate that agreement is not always necessary. We talked about that earlier. One of the interesting things is that parents in the school often have shared goals. They're just communicated differently. So often when you bring the school representative or the district representative together with parents in these type of groups, and they start to talk about their concerns and the goals, and they typically match up. So they're wanting the same outcomes. The delivery and the journey may look different, but they're wanting the same outcomes. And that's an aha moment we often say is, hey, we're on the same page, but we have a different map, a different route on the map, a different journey. So how do we put those two routes together? And that's the beauty of having these type of groups, is coming together and finding a similar path, or really mapping out that path together, because there is a way, and sometimes there's different routes to get to the same place, but trying to coordinate that together. And that's part of the process of putting these goals in place and then updating these goals. Yeah, we tried this year. It didn't work. Let's throw it out. Let's revamp it. Let's try this the next year. So, being open-minded, considering the past data, the present, and what we want the future to look like. I always mention solution-based work as well. So this is what we've done. It doesn't work. So let's move forward. What are we thinking? This is the outcome we want. So always taking into consideration what we learned, what we know, and what we're going. So some think abouts when creating group goals. I love my little abbreviations, analogies. That's just me. You'll hear me say think smarter, not harder. Work smarter, not harder. I like all these little ways to remember things. So when I create goals for my work groups, I always think SMART. So they need to be specific. Because if it's not written out for me, I go down a wormhole, or as SpongeBob says, I bring it around town. I take the long way. Well, maybe they meant this, or maybe they meant that. So it has to be specific. So if you were to not be at that meeting, that other person can pick up and say, oh, this is what they meant. So the who, what, and where. Use only one action verb to avoid issues when measuring success. Measurable. You want to focus on how much change is expected. I mentioned earlier that you don't want to put 100% graduation rate when in the past it's been 68. So you want to say how much is expected, but always remember that it can be ambitious, but it also needs to be attainable. Growth is very important, but it also wants to be attainable. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. Okay, achievable. You want it to be realistic. I just mentioned that. Given program resources and planned implementation, we know that funding is non-existent typically for advisory groups, but once you get together and you start working together, there's no reason why you can't tap into your community, your faith-based partners, your business partners. There's so many other ways. I know here a lot of the organizations sell Boston butts. That's the big thing. There's also car washes, your traditional garage sales. There's so many ways. Once you get this up and running, if you want funding, just different ways you can look into that. To go ahead and get funds for more resources. Relevant. You have to make sure that it relates directly to the program and activity goals. If you want this law changed, the statute changed or amended, is that within your cone of influence? Are you able to make sure that a senator is going to vote or lobby on this? Now, number one, is that something attainable? You want to look at that. Is that in your bylaws? Can you lobby? Most groups cannot lobby. So just thinking about, do we want to spend all of our time on this? Yes, you may. Or do you want to spend your time on things locally? So I'm not saying you can't. You can do anything that your group decides. What is the most important for that group? So you want to make sure that it's relevant and timely to what you're working on. Our state advisory committee, which I've mentioned many times, they're statutorily required to exist. More than half are parents. And then we have other government appointees from like school choice and voc rehab. But they were instrumental in getting one diploma for all. And that began with their advisement, their work, letters to the Commissioner of Education. So those things are doable. You just have to really plan out and think it through and what is relevant and what is not. So time bound, focus on when the objective will be achieved. And I talked a little bit about that earlier, about having that timeline, because you don't want to chase your tail or spin your wheels waiting on this or waiting on that. You want to make sure you're moving forward. And that can be a small pace, but that there is some movement. So establishing bylaws. This is where you really get into detail and the governance of your group. So you're going to have basically an outline, a framework of all of the things we discussed earlier, from mission, purpose, your members, all of that stuff. So your outline with your bylaws typically looks like your official title or name of your group, the mission, the purpose, and the authority. As we mentioned, your authority is to advise the school district. Advice, how it will be given and to whom. So are you going to post your minutes? Is there going to be a report? Is someone going to attend school board meetings and report out on what the result was of your advisory group meeting? Are you going to have a quarterly report that's given to the school board? I mean, there's so many options. So what is that going to look at? And of course, this is going to be all in discussions with the district staff or the Fiddler's Parent Liaison, whoever that contact person is that you're working with that represents the district. Advice, okay, we just did that. Membership, I mentioned that earlier, at least 50% of parents of students with disability, and that's very important because that is what this group is about, parents of students with disabilities. And you're navigating the system, your experiences, ways that you see that the system can be improved, solution-based think. If I do this, then this will happen. Ways to improve the process. So continuing this discussion about establishing bylaws. So there needs to be a process put in place to establish bylaws. It's a written process. We also have to talk about elections. Is there a chair and a co-chair? How long is their term? What does the election process look like? What if there is a tie? And again, you can research this online. What does the school board policies look like? What are their bylaws on their members? Look at other districts' information. I mean, you can search and pull information. Like I said, work smarter, not harder. There are lots of organizations out there that you can research and look at what they already have established. The orientation of members. Are you going to have a new members guide? Are you going to do orientation twice a year? Just things to look at. Is there a new member application that you want to create? So subcommittees. I know for our state advisory committee we have subgroups. I think we have 4 of them. One's on parent services, parent engagement, parent-family engagement. That's my subgroup. There's one for teachers and leaders. There's one for early education. So when you're looking at what your goals are, what areas you are addressing, areas of need. So you might want to have subgroups working on certain things. Fundraisers, we talked about earlier about resources. If you want to raise some funds for some of the things that you want to accomplish, you can have a fundraising subcommittee. And that's one of the things that they plan throughout the year. Their car washes, selling their barbecue, Boston butts, selling graduation signs, garage sales. So that's one subcommittee you could have. You could have one subcommittee that does a newsletter. So looking at those things and seeing, having your members share in their application what their strengths are, and taking those strengths, if someone's an editor, as I mentioned, have them do a newsletter if they're comfortable with that. So using those strengths of your members and leveraging that strength into areas that will make successful products, if you will. Okay, and also amendments. We want to have a process for amendments. We've had some rich information shared to each of you in the last 45 minutes. I hope you found it useful. I just wanted to provide some closing thoughts here. Establishing and keeping up with this type of advisory committee is a process, and it takes a lot of work. And it's not something that you should go alone, that you should do alone. So that's why it's important to start with a group and then just to keep moving forward. And be sure to use your Fiddler's Parent Services to assist your district staff, because in the end, we're all in this together. And we may, in our mind, have a different route or a different map on our journey, but we all want to go to the same destination. We want our kiddos to complete school. We want them to be successful. We want them to be community, career, and life ready. We may have different ideas on how to get to that point, but it is possible with understanding, patience, and planning, and to move forward. And hey, this didn't work. Well, let's throw it out and move forward. Or, hey, let's tweak it. It's like creating a pizza. You know, you get it together, put it in the oven, the dough didn't rise, throw it out and try again. So it's just that moving forward, it's important to acknowledge our failures because, you know, we are emotionally tied to these things. There are kiddos, you know, and acknowledge those failures, but what are ways that we can bypass those failures next time, or what went wrong? Let's bridge those gaps. So having those courageous conversations. There is no one size fits all. There is no answer to one answer to the question. So getting in there, working together, thinking. It's exhausting work, but you've lived this, you've breathed this process with your kiddos, with your families. So the beauty of this type of committee or group or council is passing that wisdom on and working together to better the services to our kiddos. So again, I hope you take away some great information from this presentation. I wish we had more time to address the information, but we are always available at the Bureau to speak to you, to assist in situations. You can always call the Bureau at 850-245-0475. We get a very high volume of parent calls, so if you call and identify yourself as a parent, you will be put in a database, and a program specialist will be giving you a call typically within 24 hours. It will not always be me, because as you can understand, with serving over 400,000 kiddos, I don't have the capacity to give everybody a call back, but you also have the option to send us an email with your concerns at eseparentservices@fldoe.org. We pride ourselves on our responsiveness to parents. We are servants of the public, and our job is to interact with you and to hear your concerns and assist where we can. So again, I appreciate all of your time today, and thank you for listening to our presentation. Again, if you have any questions, if you need assistance, feel free to reach out. If you do have specific questions that you need me to address, my email is amy.kowalczyk@fldoe.org, and you will find that email on slide 2 below my name. Thank you again. Take care, and best of luck.